Hi everyone. So like she said, my name is Josi Lieb. I just graduated from Ohio Northern University, and in a few weeks I'll be starting my master's degree at Queen's University Belfast. Okay. So before I get started about Lucy through the lens of her college essays, we're going to start with the traditional view of the First Ladies. So what you see on the screen is the National Museum of American History Smithsonian's First Lady exhibit. So taking a phrase from one of my professor's handbooks, notice what you notice about this exhibit. What do you see? What are the artifacts, and what do you think the story is there? Despite the beauty and the delicacy of this exhibit, it seems like there's been a reevaluation of America's First Lady. When you're ready, you can turn to the next slide. Three examples of this that I found was with Martha Washington, Abigail Adams, and Dolly Madison. I used two books, one published first in 1975 by the White House Historical Association, and the second one first published in 2009. So in 1975, Martha Washington is viewed as a content wife who wanted a private life, and in 2009, she becomes the reason behind George Washington's wealth, a woman with a mind for business, and a Revolutionary War clerk entrusted with military secrets. Abigail Adams in 1975 is credited with being the wife of one president and the mother to another president, so making her a great American patriot. She also endured long separations from her husband, John Adams. In 2009, she becomes her husband's partner, being so firm in her opinion that she would rather be shot like a turkey than to keep her opinions to herself. And then her famous quote that she told her husband when he was drafting the Declaration, one of the writers and signers of the Declaration of Independence, "Remember the ladies." Dolly Madison in 1975 is known for being happily married, beloved for her social skills, and, quote, honored and loved by all. In 2009, her skills were such a strength that she was sat at the head of the table at dinners because her husband knew that she would be able to have conversation that included everyone and didn't really offend anyone. And when news came that the British were heading for Washington, D.C. and the newly built White House, she gathered servants together to protect items from the White House that we still know today, like the famous painting of George Washington. And while it's important to note, both of these interpretations are factual, but they just turn to different areas of the women's lives when they came to creating their narratives of them. However, in both interpretations, next slide please, sorry, Lucy Hayes is just Lucy Hayes. Even in the 2009 interpretation, she's mainly credited for being the first lady who banned alcohol in the White House. However, in 1975, she is credited with being Mother Lucy to Ohio 23rd. So it's interesting that that was where she was credited versus in 2009. But despite those interpretations, she's highly in tune with the world around her in terms of ideals, religion, history, and politics. And it was with the examination of her essays as a college woman that we were able to see really where her mind was and what she was like as an individual. Next slide. So Lucy Webb attended Cincinnati Wesleyan Female College from 1847 to 1850, and a few noteworthy situations or events that were going on at the time were the Oregon Trail of 1843, a few years prior, the revolutions of 1848, and the Seneca Falls Convention of 1848 as well, when women in America gathered together to ask for the right to vote. There were around 400 students at the time when Lucy studied at Cincinnati Wesleyan. She was known as, quote, diligent and anxious to excel in her studies. She was in honor societies, and she was passionate about her essay topics. Next slide. Before we talk about the meat of her essays, we're going to start with a little bit of surface level stuff. So a couple interesting words that she used were Romanism to discuss Catholics, and Mohammedans to discuss Muslims. She also uses the long S. A famous location for that is the United States Constitution. And you can see on the slide under the picture of the Constitution is where she used it in her essay, and it's circled in pink or orange or whatever that color is. One of my favorite parts about Lucy's essays is her grammar edits by her professors. In the book by Emily Apt Greer, she talks about how Lucy was so passionate about her topics that she didn't always pay attention to grammar. And so it wasn't her main focus. Next slide. The first topic that we're going to talk about is her discussion of knowledge and happiness. She puts a lot of importance on people having knowledge, and she says that knowledge makes people happy, and happiness is the greatest and most natural desire of the human heart. In fact, not only is it the most natural desire, people have sacrificed so much to be happy. In one of her essays, she says, quote, "If we turn to the pages of history, we will find that it is not the present or any one generation who have so much desired its attainment, that it has been a ruling passion in all ages and among all people." In a way, she's saying you can't have happiness without having knowledge, which is pretty interesting. In another essay, she compares knowledge to wealth, and she says, in most cases, that you can't just have wealth. So you can't just have knowledge either. It's through careful and diligent study that you acquire knowledge. Next slide. Our next topic is religion. She writes from a Protestant perspective, a Methodist denomination is what she was from. An interesting part about that denomination in the time is that church had just split. They had just split over the issue of slavery. And it's interesting, her location is Cincinnati, right across the river from Kentucky, which was a slave state. Ohio was not a slave state, so she's kind of in the middle of that denomination split as well. And almost every essay has something about her faith in it, and so you can tell that was very important to her. In one essay, she argues that religion didn't require sacrifices until the fall, so they didn't go a long time before religion required sacrifices, but that was her argument there. She also has an essay comparing Protestantism and Catholicism, again from a Protestant perspective, so we know what side of the aisle she was on for that argument. The next topic is history. Apart from one essay, history isn't used as a essay topic. It is used to strengthen her argument. However, the history that she involves isn't just American, it's also world history. So the first essay, one essay that she writes is The Prospect of America. It's a short essay about how America was founded and where it was to the point where she was at in college. In an essay, Is Ambition a Greater Promotive of Liberty Than Personal Necessity?, she relates her argument of ambition being the most powerful tool to two historical figures still known today, the first being Napoleon, and you can see highlighted in the top box is where she's talking about him saying that none of his achievements or nothing that he did would have happened if he wasn't ambitious. In the second box there, you see she's hitting the heart of a true American patriot by talking about George Washington. She argues that without Washington's ambition, we would still be, quote, struggling under British thraldom. And I did have to look that word up. That word does mean bondage, slavery, or servitude. So she uses a big, bold word to describe what would have happened if Washington was not ambitious. And it doesn't sound fun. Oops. The next slide talks about politics. And under politics, we have three different subsections. The first being liberty. And is the world advancing in mental and moral improvement? She's very optimistic about not only the state of America, but the state of the world. She's talking about Christianity spreading and monarchies falling. And here she could be talking about Hungary gaining independence from Austria or the revolutions of 1848. Under liberty, she says that countries without liberty are in a state of civil war. And she uses the country of Turkey for her example of that in the first box in the upper right-hand corner. And she also quotes that liberty is a desire implanted in the human heart, and people can't gain intelligence or knowledge without liberty. So there we're going back to our happiness argument. So if they can't have liberty, they don't have knowledge and they can't be happy, if we're connecting those essays in that line of thought. The next subsection is the one that gains her the Lemonade Lucy title, and that is temperance. She has an essay devoted to this topic called Has Society the Right to Prohibit the Manufacture and Sale of Ardent Spirits? She says that anything that injures or endangers should be prohibited, and that men who are not for temperance spend all of their money on alcohol and hurt their family because they can't provide for them. So she wasn't for temperance because she didn't like alcohol. She was for temperance because she was against it hurting the family, which is not really something we hear when we learn about Lemonade Lucy, just that she didn't like alcohol. And the final quote may be because of Seneca Falls, or it might be because of the mindset of women leading up to Seneca Falls. But that quote talks about how it is now acknowledged by most persons that her mind, being women as a whole, is as strong as man's. Instead of being considered the slave of man, she is considered his equal in all things and his superior in some. So that's what I have for her college essays, but I want to give a brief talk about who she was after that. On December 30th in 1852, she married Rutherford B. Hayes, and during the Civil War, she was referred to as Mother Lucy from the men of Ohio 23rd because she was at the camps helping them as much as she could. During her husband's years as a politician, she considered it their political career, not his political career. And throughout the rest of her life, she was passionate about education and politics and her faith. She became a member of the Women's Home Missionary Society of the Methodist Episcopal Church, and in 1880 she served as their president. What was interesting about that is that she was also First Lady during that time. So maybe instead of jumping to Lemonade Lucy as the first story that we hear of Lucy Hayes, this interpretation can help her being credited as more than that, and maybe as the first lady to earn a college degree. I don't know. She's that as well. But like Martha Washington, Lucy bravely went with her husband to encampments to help with the war effort. And Abigail Adams, Lucy was also really informed about her opinions, and she wasn't afraid to write them down or speak them. And like Dolly Madison, she was truly cherished and loved as a First Lady. So this is when I'm opening the floor to answer any questions that I can.
Okay, so if anybody has any questions, can you please go ahead and enter them in the chat box? You should see a chat bubble. Okay. And we'll give you guys a few minutes to enter your questions. In the meantime, I guess we'll tell you about a couple upcoming events if you don't mind while they're typing.
Go for it.
We are going to have our craft beers, cocktails, and preachers event on Saturday, August 29th. You can get tickets online at rbhays.org. It will be outside on the grounds, physically distanced. So that'll be a good time. We will have food trucks on site as well. And also that day, this is very relevant to Josi's talk today, we are celebrating Lucy's birthday on August the 29th during the day. So from 9 to 5, we're going to have lemonade and explain why she was, into the temperance movement. We're going to have her dresses on display. Her dresses actually are going on display next week. And we're open Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So they start next Saturday and will be open till Saturday the 29th. So you can come in and see her dresses with regular museum admission or a site pass. Or if you're a member, you get in for free. We're going to have some special events for Lucy's birthday. So visit us at rbhays.org for the details on those two upcoming events.
We do have a question from one of our viewers who wants to know how long the essays are and are they readable?
They're all in cursive, so I think that depends on who's trying to read them. As long as you can read cursive. The scans are a little hard to read, but that's to be expected. But they're normally about 3 or 4 handwritten pages on average, I would say.
I have a question,
Okay.
actually.
Yeah.
Were these in response to particular assignments, or was she allowed to select her own topics for any essays that she was required to write?
Right. Actually, in the Greer book about Lucy, she says that Lucy was always kind of nervous on picking her topics. So I think there was a little bit of both. I don't know if she got to pick them most of the time, but it sounded like it because there were notes that she had written to one of her friends saying, "What are you doing next? Like, what are you writing about?" And the friend was like, "I don't know. What are you writing about?" on the back of a notepad or whatever. So.
Another viewer is asking, what issues or activities did she pursue after leaving the White House?
I don't know for sure, but I think the religious group was really important to her. I think she was in multiple, or that one was just very, very active in that. But other than that, I'm not quite.
In the Women's Missionary.
Yes.
The Missionary Society.
Yes, that's the one.
Yes.
We can also add to that, since we cover that in the museum. She also helped start an orphanage in Xenia, Ohio. So she and Rutherford championed veterans' rights from the Civil War. That was something they did after retirement. And then orphans, because so many kids were made orphans by the Civil War. So we have a little bit about that in the museum.
That's cool.
I have a question also about kind of a technical question about grammar and spelling. Can you address that in her essays and her writings?
Yeah, so I have in the second slide, or the slide that talks about her format, there's actually a picture of corrections in the essay. Some of the words weren't necessarily spelled wrong, but you could tell she got quick when she was writing, and it was more about, this is what I want to say, I'm just going to pour it out. And so there were commas missing places and periods and just the normal thing that college students do when they get too excited.
So kind of writing as she was thinking.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah,
and
for
putting
sure.
them down. Okay. Are there any other questions for Josi here?
How many essays are there?
What was the question?
How many essays are there
How many essays are there
in your collection?
Well, I think I got about 10 essays. I didn't count them.
About 10.
But
okay.
there were quite a few. You could have a whole book on them.
Just to let our viewers know, if you hear another voice coming in, there are a couple members of Josi's household also here in the room with us. So if you hear other questions coming from in the room, that's why.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions from?
What
was your favorite part of doing this?
Oh,
they're asking what her favorite part of this project was.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that there are two different ways of approaching history. One is a very academic and serious sense of like, here are the facts, here I'm going to paint you the facts, and the other is a more like personal sense of getting to know someone and having an understanding of who they were and why that's important and why you want to know about it. And I've always been one to be on the more personal sense of research. And so my favorite part was having Lucy Hayes become more than a painting or someone in a book or someone that's just a historical figure, and learning about her thoughts and what her mind was like and her views on political issues. It's like she kind of became my friend, you know? And so I think that was my favorite part of getting to know her in a way that we haven't really tried to in history yet.
Would you like for us to share the slide where you have some of your sources that was at the end of the program there?
Yeah, sure.
If anyone would like to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the book by Greer is actually available here through you guys, so if people want to read it. It's a good read. I had so much fun. I think every day I went to my advisor and I was like, look at this, Dr. Scherbetter, look what I have today. And it was always something new.
And here on this slide, there is a list of the titles of the college essays, if everyone would like to take a look at that as well. I'm sorry, we probably should have moved to that slide earlier so you could have seen all of those.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions from anybody? Okay. No other questions.
We got one more.
Questions and no, please.
Are these essays in like a bounded journal? Are they loosely
No.
paper? Like,
Is asking if the essays are in one bound document, if they're all together somewhere.
They're all just scanned copies of the essays.
Individual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's very interesting. But once you get past the like, do they want to see an essay up close to see kind of what her handwriting looked like? I know we had quotes throughout, but there's her long S right there. But once you get past the cursive and the scan and get used to reading them, they're enjoyable. I loved reading them. I think they were so interesting, and to like have that conversation in a way, it felt like you were just hearing her talk to you all about whatever essay we were talking about. It was very interesting.
Okay, well, if there are no other questions, then we thank all of you for attending today. This has been recorded, so we will be able to have this on file then. We thank you for joining us today, and thanks so much, Josi, for sharing her research with us.
Thank you.
Obviously, this became very very personal for you,
Mm-hmm.
and we're so glad that you wanted to share it with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone, and please enjoy the rest of your weekend.